In this psychology revision video, we will review prosocial and bystander behaviour from paper 2, topic 5, social influence. For this section, we need to know definitions of the keywords above, the famous subway study, evaluation of this study, the social factors that affect and influence our bystander behaviour, and the dispositional factors. So, we'll get straight in with some vocabulary. Firstly, prosocial behaviour. Prosocial behaviour is behaviour which benefits other people in society and usually comes at no benefit to the helper. So things like giving to charity, helping a little old lady cross the street, that's a really helpful behaviour. It helps somebody out, but it gives you no personal benefit. When it comes to bystander behaviour, being a bystander essentially means being a witness to an emergency, and the behaviour that you take in that emergency is your bystander behaviour. There's two main types of behaviour that you can take. You could either do bystander intervention or bystander apathy. Bystander intervention is when you help, and bystander apathy is when you don't help. The whole point of this section of the psychology course is to understand why people do and why people don't help other people in an emergency situation. So the really famous study by Piliavin, the subway study, went a little bit like this. So really interested in finding out why people help or don't help others in an emergency, and Piliavin decided to investigate whether appearance had an impact on our behaviour. So what he decided to do was to get a Confederate dressed up in 3 different styles, and this Confederate would collapse on a train carriage, and ultimately Piliavin would observe with 2 observers just to observe what the participants, what the general public did in the situation where people fell over. So the 3 appearances were: the Confederate was either dressed up with a walking stick, dressed with a facial scar, or dressed in a sort of like pretending to be drunk style. And as you would expect, we had these results. So the person, when dressed up with a walking stick, got helped up 90% of the time. When they had a facial scar, so it looked a little bit more intimidating, got helped up only 60% of the time. But when they were drunk or pretending to be drunk, they only got helped up 20% of the time. Clearly showing us that the way that you look will massively influence whether a bystander will help you or not. So this is a sort of diagram of what the study sort of set up like. So as you can see, on the left hand side you've got the left of the carriage where the observers were sitting, and on the right hand side we've got where the Confederate would take the fall, and we could see how the participants, the general public, reacted. So when it comes to evaluating this study, what can we say? Well, it's quite a lot actually. If we consider the fact that it was a field experiment, that's a natural setting but highly controlled independent variables, it allows us to really evaluate this really easily. So a natural environment means we have high ecological validity. So being a field study, we get a natural setting, and the participants didn't know that this was a study and that it was happening. So all the behaviour should have been really natural, so we should be able to trust the reactions of the participants. Also, having 2 observers, we know this is really good. It gives us high inter-observer reliability. However, being a natural study, we do have the risk of extraneous variables affecting behaviour. It could be that people were running late for work, and this may have been the reason why they didn't help. It may have been nothing to do with the appearance of the Confederate. It may just have been other things that people were going through at the time. Ethics, obviously we've got a broken ethic here. We've just said they weren't aware that they were being observed, so we've got a consent is being broken. So this is a small concern, not really fair to study on people without their permission. But then sometimes it's essential to get that natural behaviour. And just like every observation, there's always the risk of misinterpretations of behaviour. So were people ignoring the help, or were they genuinely unaware? It's difficult to know without being able to talk to the participants. Okay, so in terms of discussing what actually influences our bystander behaviour, we've got two social factors and two dispositional factors. So our two social factors are the presence of others and the cost of helping. So presence of others is essentially talking about how many people are around in that emergency situation. So the more people that are around, the less likely you would be to pause and help due to something called the diffusion of responsibility. With lots of people in the environment, you're more likely to feel less responsible. You're more likely to think that someone else can help, or that maybe someone else was more qualified to help. So this is more likely that you will leave the emergency area and think that someone else will help. Obviously, this is a real concern in real life cases. In the case of something like the case of Kitty Genovese, when everybody suffered the diffusion of responsibility and nobody helped her. We have the cost of helping, and the cost being like, if helping would be in some way expensive to you, then you're less likely to help. Now, I don't necessarily mean it's going to cost you money to help them. We mean that things like, you might be running late for work, you might be late for an appointment, you might view it as dangerous. So the expense would be a risk to you. So you might think, no, that's not worth the risk to help. When it comes to dispositional factors, we have similarity and expertise. So similarity means if you are similar to the victim, then you are more likely to help them. This is largely because we're more likely to empathise with them in the situation. So if we see someone in need and they look similar to us, we're more likely to view ourselves in that situation and think, if that was me, I'd really hope someone would help, so I'm going to go and help. Expertise, we can simply say if you are an expert in helping people, maybe in a medical professional like a nurse or a doctor or a paramedic, then you are also more likely to help. You know how to help people. You're a first aider. You're much more likely to help in an emergency situation. So that brings to an end this quick summary video on prosocial behaviour and bystander behaviour. We've gone through the key definitions, the famous subway study, and evaluated it, and we have covered the social and dispositional factors. To the next video, good luck revising.